Ladies and gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen, and everything that's burrowed deep in the epistemological walls between those things, you've now already heard enough words to determine whether or not the cognitive dialect I'll be speaking today is right for you. If you're still here, I'm Layman Pascal, and this is The Fault in Our Stars, a trans-skeptical integral stage series devoted to various flavors of alternative sense-making. Since conventional reasoning doesn't seem to be solving our problems or lighting up our souls. Joining us is a premier example of an alternative sense maker, Cris Beasley, who avid viewers and listeners might remember from a very interesting discussion on our Soul of AI series. She's an intriguing blend of programmer, witch, businesswoman, musician, video artist, philosopher, channeler, and she might just be the kind of person that this moment of world history needs. Let's find out in a conversation called Seek First the Frequency of the Goddess. Hi, Cris.
Hi. You have got to move the wire. Move the wire.
All right. How about that? It's like a duck to either side. It gives me a lot of options, this wire.
No. Listen.
Nice.
We are recording this early in the morning, and my stomach is on its own schedule, so I do apologize.
Fair enough. Cris, why is this conversation called Seek First the Frequency of the Goddess? Where does that come from?
So my friend David Swedlow, who's on a previous episode as well, sent me a ridiculously long document about Seek First the Kingdom of Heaven, which I'm still going through my, whatever you want to call it, process with Christianity. And sometimes the words that come from scripture, they lose their baggage, their distortion, and they come to represent something like very deeply helpful. I'm still struggling with the kingdom of heaven. I think I have too much patriarchy rage in my bones. I just can't align to that at this point in my life. So I could feel that there was a truth to it that was helpful, but I needed to make it in my own language. So Seek First the Frequency of the Goddess is my version of what that is trying to capture in its essence. And for me, as a woman, embodiment of feminine qualities, seeking the frequency of the goddess feels like my first job. Kingdom of Heaven, we get to that next. Let me start with the easier portal to go through. And then secondly, why that is first. I want to talk about second, but I'm going to pause and let you respond to that. Well, I eat a bite.
Yeah. I read that document, and I love David. I'm a Swedlovian for sure. I really liked the way he sort of unpacked it conversationally with the robot, the different components of the speech, and lands in this non-dual place, and then wants to know how the church would view that, and then kind of gets to a place where it proposes some interesting structural options for communities of people that want to try this Seeking First the Kingdom of Heaven. But what stands out to me as the difference, just like phonetically almost, between the two phrases is that one's very musical, one's very scriptural, right? Frequency is very acoustic. First and frequency have an alliteration. Seek First the Kingdom of Heaven is very blocky, very textual, very old media, very last 3,000 years. I was curious, as somebody who focuses a lot on music, whether how you think about the musicality in Seek First the Frequency of the Goddess.
Well, as soon as it popped into my my head, I was like, "Ooh, I got to do a song named that." that's got to come into the album that I'm working on for a very long time. As many great musicians have years to make their first album, I intend to fully inhabit as long as that needs to take. So I'm working on an album called Strange Karma. that, if you hear enough stories about my life, you'll be like, girl, that girl's got some strange karma. For sure. And I want to play with an invitation that I got from a Brian Eno course. He did this course for like $3. No, it wasn't $3. It was like $160. There were 1,000 people that showed up, and he taught songwriting in January. And one of the things that he emphasized was we can have music with lyrics. A lot of us early didn't or had very minimal. But he's like, if you don't want to write pop music with a verse, a chorus, and a verse, you can take a very small transmission. And when we hear a phrase over and over and over again, like a mantra, it almost, have you ever said a word? This is the thing I did as a kid. I imagine a lot of kids did. You say a word again and again until it kind of like disintegrates and it changes in your head. That's some of the stuff that I like to play with, is the music that slips you into other states of consciousness. Because I went to a cult on my own. It wasn't the one that I was raised in. My best friend, her grandma had a yard sale, and Sister Bass, the pastoress of the church, the wife of the pastor, stopped and bought a vacuum cleaner, and they started up a conversation, and my best friend started going and having piano lessons. She invited me. So at 15, I decided to, against the wishes of my family, who was Baptist and Methodist, I was about as spicy as it got. You Baptist and Methodist. Ain't much difference as far as they were concerned. But anyway, there was a lot of difference to what I was doing, because I was speaking in tongues. I learned how to play the trumpet. There was a church band. I was in the choir, like much more musical. And I got my energetic and musical training in the cult church. It was the most interesting thing I could be doing in Paragould, Arkansas, I'm sure.
All right, let's come back to the firstness of
You
it
have
all.
to, you're in charge of closing the parentheses. I just open them.
So in David's document, he explores the difference between first as the initial position in a sequence and first as a kind of ontological condition that precedes sequences. And of course, the number one is about as patriarchal a symbol as you can get. How are you holding first in Seek First, the Frequency of the Goddess?
I use it to prioritize my life. I use it in the sense of like, and priority is one. You have one priority. You don't have three priorities. You don't have four priorities. You don't have two priorities. You have one priority. That's what the word means. Priority means one. I'm so sorry, project managers. I think the best of you already know that. But because we are in a world that is very multitasking, and there are people on the planet that have that energetic blueprint. If you're into the human design, these are the manifesting generators. They are meant to spin 7 plates. If you try to make them spin 1 plate, they will be very unhappy. They'll be very, very unhappy. But I need to have one priority. I'm a generator. I need to have one thing to do. That's it per day. I can do different things on different days, but each day I need to have one priority. And whatever that theme of the day is, I am starting each and every day with my frequency. Because I don't know how you are when you wake up. Hang on, this blue screen is on my nerve. When I wake up, I'm all kinds of outs of sorts. I don't feel good. Sometimes, I mean, for the longest, for years, I woke up and was sad every day. Once I became embodied, I went from being disembodied and not knowing I was sad every day, being embodied and being sad every day, which seems like backward progress. Like, you really have to keep the faith through that phase. It's gnarly. It was real gnarly. I might cry a little bit. Whew. There's not time to tell you how gnarly that was. But coming into embodiment, feeling and pulling through, I don't wake up sad every day anymore. Thank goodness. But I still do wake up janky. And I have to attune my frequency. And I've gone through various phases of various practices with that. But man, the very first thing before cell phone, for sure, before even touching a digital device, my commitment is to get up, make connection with divinity, call in the 7 directions, channel. I got my little routine. It probably won't be the same in a year. It was different a year ago. A year ago, I was standing on the roof and greeting the mountains and singing and playing my drum. And it doesn't matter what you do, but to first, literally first thing in the morning and as a priority, as the center column of myself from which everything arises. Perhaps I'm doing both. I don't know what all of the fancy words that you were. I don't really know what ontological means, to be honest. I've heard it so many times. I took a philosophy class in college and they talked about it so much. And I think I got an A in that class, but I don't really know what ontological means.
It's just whatever is. It's like another word for reality.
Okay.
Although there's a little fine tune there because Heidegger used to make an argument about the things we call ontological are really ontic. So there's all the beings, the stuff you think is, and then there's the isness of what is. So there's two slightly different. Sometimes people say ontological and they mean what's really real, and sometimes they mean what are all the real things. But it's basically whatever we think exists is ontological. And then epistemological is whatever we think we know about what exists, but we could be wrong.
Okay. Those are relevant concepts to me. I never use those words though.
I never used to, but once you get familiar with them, they're so useful and they're kind of fun to say. They come off your tongue neat.
I used to use words that I didn't know what they meant, and I would just use them anyway so that I could sound smart. I heard that in a sentence once, but I don't actually know it. Then I realized it didn't help me sound smart to use them wrong and confuse people, so I stopped. Anyway, was Heidegger happy? I had a coworker who had a dog named Heidegger, and he wasn't happy, and I don't know if the dog was happy either.
I mean, I've seen some photos of him. He doesn't look that happy.
He doesn't look happy.
He kind of betrayed his tutor and mentor. He kind of joined the Nazis. He had a pretty bleak outlook. I think maybe at the end of his life, he started to think there might be some unexpected future transformation that redeemed a lot of the stuff he was saying. I think he got a bit hopeful toward the end, but generally, I think he was a pretty dour, sour German dude.
There's a whole bunch of the philosophers that people talk about a lot that I really have a hard time. I'm just not going to read their book if they didn't have a life that they enjoyed. If they ended up in their days where they had a disaster of relationships and I'm real practical like that. And maybe I'm missing a whole lot, but I have to have a way to filter because I haven't even got to the emerald tablets yet. And I really like to read the emerald tablets.
Was those Hermes happy?
A cult leader. I just have a way I have to cut some shit out. There's not time for me to read everything I want to know about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard of the dark night of the soul. I love your story about the dark, sad morning of the soul. The dark, sad every morning of the soul.
Every day.
And then we get to the getting past that phase to the ordinary jankiness of every morning. And I mean, I want to go down the one thing path again, but first on this jankiness thing, I'm curious what you find works for you to attune your frequency and what it is you think you're attuning your frequency to when you do those practices. Is it something in you? Is it the day? Is it the world? Where's the other that the attunement is attuning to?
Yeah, so I am calling in the 7 directions. So I'm attuning to time and space. So we just had the equinox. So I faced east. I got up on my roof at dawn with my rocks. And I wanted to calibrate east, not with my cell phone compass, but with my body. I want to feel time in my body. I want my body to be geolocated. I wanted to feel the passing of the seasons, right? So I faced east. I put my rocks down. So now I have my compass. So I'm located in space. And also, where are we in the year, right? So whenever we get to the other side, we will have a mark again where the sun rises in 6 months, right? Because I want to feel that passing of the year. I want to feel these long cycles of time because it helps me slow the fuck down. Right? We're over here doom scrolling. I don't like it. I've watched 2 minutes. Like that frequency is like the parasite frequency. We'll talk about parasites, I hope, later. I'm in a whole journey with decolonizing my body. But that fast, I'm tired. My body's tired. I need to slow down, right? So when I wake up and I'm janky and I have that feeling of overwhelm because my mind or whatever demon programs, whatever you want to call it, I kind of like my ego these days. So I don't want to say it's my ego. I like my ego. My ego's doing a good job. Hold on. But whatever that part of me is that stacks up a to-do list and is like, I need to call the plumber, the refrigerator is currently leaking, and I want to hang the paintings, and I want to do all my financial work, and I probably should get started on taxes, and 1099s are due, and blah, blah. This is today's. This is today's to do. I will not get all of those things done. My priority is to show up for this interview, and whatever flows out of the day that is coherent with that, great. But this is my priority. I may not deal with the refrigerator that's leaking until tomorrow, and that's okay. So coming out of that and into the slow time is the shift that grounds me, right? I'm very earthy. I need to calm down to material reality. I can float up and I can be like this big old pyramid that's super powerful and strong, but isn't sitting on the ground. So I have to sit my pyramid down on the ground every day. Calling in 7 directions, north, south, east, west. That's Gaia, Father Sky, Mother Earth, calling in the unbroken lineage of the fathers, because we're living in a time where the lineage is broken in many places, but it does exist. Like calling back the remembrance that there is an unbroken lineage of the fathers, feeling that. Get down on the ground, hands on the ground, forehead on the ground. Thank you, Mother, calling in the unbroken lineage of the mother. My father's lineage, my mother's lineage were broken in my body. But that doesn't mean that I can call it in and flip those epigenetic switches. So that's what I'm doing every day, is like repatterning. Yes, this body was abandoned. Yes, this body was neglected. Yes, this mother and father were not physically there, but they're with me now. I inherited an unbroken lineage. So just like bringing that back down in, because the knowing is there, but if I don't bring it back into the body every single morning, it ain't gonna be there. It's not. And then finally, the center. So calling in the galactic center, the center of my being, harvesting the void, like getting real interdimensional, calling in the star nations, calling in like, who knows what angelic dragon frequencies, like I call it all in. I love the multi-dimensional realm. So 7 directions is huge for me now.
Yeah, it's interesting to end on that 7th place because the first 6 are very, very Gaian, very earthy, like not just the 4 that go out, but above and below are how it looks from the surface of the earth. And this long time is, yes, it's longer than clock time, but it's not as long as which galactic eon are we in. It's very tied to what's going on this planet.
Yes.
But then you come to this place at the end, which is potentially a bigger scale than the planetary scale.
Yeah.
What have you observed, like either in yourself or in other people who sort of go at the day and start working on the chronos without setting themselves in the kairos? People who aren't attuned in this way, when they start going at the practicalities, do they do it differently? Is there a different flavor, a different kind of outcome?
Well, it's completely different. And I mean, it was me. I don't have to look at other people. I can look at me. I know me real well. I had so much mental chatter. I didn't know how to answer the question. Do I deal with the refrigerator? Do I deal, which of those 7 things, 6 things, whatever, that all feel like they have to be done today? Which actually has to be done today? How do I set my priority? How do I pull my frequency out of a frustration and overwhelm? And no matter how much I check off the to-do list, I will not be satisfied. I needed to move into focus on one thing and be satisfied with that. That's a huge difference, right? Like, my new motto is make satisfying mistakes. I'm like, what? I only have to make one satisfying mistake a day? I got that. That's easy. I can make one satisfying mistake a day. Still scary, still intimidating. But the difference is that I sit down and I channel, right? Like, I'm still a little annoyed. Let's be real. I'm still working through some stuff about Christianity, because I wasn't taught how to pray in a way that actually got my prayers answered. When I left the church, I was like, this is all bullshit, because a lot of it was, right? I was praying, but I was just talking to a wall, because they didn't teach me that they're actually, it's like baking a cake. If you don't put all the required ingredients in the cake, you don't get a cake. You get something that's kind of inedible. It just doesn't really work. So what has worked for me is starting with gratitude. Like, I face the east, call in the east. Thank you for this day. Like, I'm so grateful to be alive. Gratitude. Prior to that, I was singing a song, like making an offering, some kind of offering. Gratitude's a great offering, right? Start there. Start in the feminine, start in the yin. Offering. Then say whatever you're going to have to say. That's the only thing that I thought prayer was. I thought prayer was just, I'm going to tell God what it is that I need. That's step 2. But there's more steps, right? So you have to listen. Step 3, listen. Do you know that the universe speaks back to you? Because if you're not listening, it's because you don't know that the universe is speaking back to you. It speaks back to all of us in a different way. I couldn't possibly name that. I don't know what they all are. The universe talks to David super different. I don't understand, but he understands, and that's all that matters. And you understand how divinity speaks with you. I don't care. Like, yours doesn't need to look like mine, but figure out whatever yours is. It's probably idiosyncratic. You might not be able to find it in a book, but divine will show you if you just keep asking, like, I don't understand how you talk to me. Please show you. Like, that might be your first lesson. How does the divine speak to me in a way that I can clearly understand what it's saying? Whatever that is, that's step 3. And then step 4 is write that shit down, because I've got little demon programs that erases that. And if I don't write it down in my journal, I'll be later in the day and I'll be like, no, I don't remember what it said. And I can feel that part of me that's like, la, 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 you don't, like, there's stuff in your brain that's erasing. There's like hackers in my brain, at least, that will erase what I need to know, because it's too confronting to that part of me. They will wall it off. And then 5 is accountability. Every day I look back on what Spirit said. And some days they told me to do something real specific. I didn't do it. This is really tough, not to attack yourself, not to blah, blah, whatever. Not to get, it doesn't help if you're judging yourself. You're just blocking your progress, in the words of Lee Harris. But just to notice it. And maybe that's your question for this day, is like, hey, I wanted to do that. I tried to do that, or I didn't want to do it. Whatever the case may be, I couldn't take that in. Can you break that down into a form that's more digestible so that I can get it, so that I can start to do it? So I also write down the best of yesterday, which I love. It was the best thing that happened, because often that's a part of my grumpiness. So I'm like, yesterday was shit. I don't know why I always think yesterday was shit. I do. I swear I do. So if I write down the best of, it makes like almost always when I sit down and write down, like nothing good happened yesterday. I didn't like it. But I make myself figure out what was actually good. I write it down. And then at the end of the month, you can review all of that stuff if you want to. So that is my current morning routine, and I freaking love it. But it has all of the elements of what, like, if you do those things, your life is going to rapidly shift because you have all of the ingredients to be in accountability and conversation via logos, to use a layman word, with the divine.
There's something I really like about the um, evaluation of yesterday and the way it relates to prioritizing activities for today, because they both involve clarifying value, right? I've very often, like, if you have kids in the house and they come home from school and how was it? It was fine. And you're like, okay, that's not very useful. That's like a homogeneous, flat evaluation. Value actually only exists in contrast. So I'm going to need to hear either the worst or the best thing that happened today so that there's a polarity, because with that polarity, what was best about yesterday, then I'm viscerally reminded of what value consists of, and I can use that value to help organize my priorities for the day. They're not just a bunch of things I have to do. There's a kind of an organic hierarchy there, but I can only make that hierarchy in a non-pathological way if I actually remember what my value consists of.
Right. Yeah, totally. It surprises me sometimes what turned out to be the best of. And it helps me to orient to things that are not statusy, because I have a real Enneagram 3. I need to prioritize the things that will make me money. And sitting on the sofa and having kitty cats lay on me and just like a heart explosion. That's seek first the frequency of the goddess. Like slowing down enough to sit with your cats and have a little love explosion in your heart. You know, they don't happen every day, but when they do, they lift everything so much. There's one more thing I want to add about channel, like divine speaking to you. Divine speaks to me through channeling. And so I literally will just put that whole big mess of 5 priorities that I think I need to have. And I'll just ask my channel, what am I supposed to do today? And they will very specifically, I will get a very clear orientation theme for the day. This is what you need to worry about this one thing. And it often surprises me. But the bigger thing is when I start to have that spin up of the overwhelm, which goes into shutdown really quickly. I am now in enough trust and confidence with my ability to channel that I can respond to that from another part of my consciousness and say, hey, you don't have to worry about, you're not in charge of figuring this out. I really appreciate that you make the list of everything that you're concerned about. Like, that's an essential function. So happy that you did that. But the part of me that makes the list of everything I could be doing isn't the part of me that selects what the priority is. And like, I don't need to guess what divinity wants. I just need to go ask. And it's very humbling. Like, I tried to run my life from that consciousness for such a long time, and it just never worked in the way that I knew it was supposed to work. It never brought me to lightness. It never got me to a place where I was like, oh, I have fuck you money and now I can retire. I never got there. And the people who have got there don't even know that they're there. Like, I have some friends who are wildly wealthy, and they're some of the busiest, most people I've ever met.
I relate to a lot of this, but I go at things a little bit differently. But it's unclear how different is. As a manifesting generator Pisces, um, my my approach to one thing is to integrate multiple things.
Mm,
And if I have the same feeling, I don't need to guess what divinity wants, but that's because I make an effort to combine the opposites that present themselves to me until they like oneify. So rather than like either receiving the one thing to work on or finding the one thing to work on,
mm,
I
mhm.
take a multiplicity or a dyad and I force it together until there is no other thing than this like super synthesized thing. And then I'm like, well, there's no other things. That's the thing then. Which sounds both similar and different to what you're saying.
And then do you take those agglomerations and then weld those together as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And responsibly, like not as a top-down procedure, but like when they present as alternatives or friction or turbulence, or you're trying to focus and there's a distraction, I'm like they present themselves as alternatives, and then I just combine those. And if no alternative presents, then I go forward. And if another alternative presents, combine those.
So one of the names for the manifesting generator is the time bender. Have you heard that one before? And is it related to what you're describing?
It's related to a very vivid dream I had last night.
Of course it is. Tell us about it.
um, there was the dream had three parts, but in one part I was in this. I was trying to help some people get something accomplished, and it was very time specific. But the apartment had a swinging door, and in the next apartment over was mostly older women who kept coming in and interfering, laying on the couch and turning the TV up and down. And some of it seemed like it came out of wisdom, and some of it came out of like compulsive interference. And they couldn't verbalize what they were doing, and there was no coordination. And I kept having to try to adjust the schedule so that people could get coordinated to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. But the schedule kept fluxing out due to all the extra
Mhm.
chaos. And so my job in the dream was managing and like re-scripting time to flex around whatever was occurring, although at the same time a little bit agitated that I had to keep doing that and wondering if they were trying to get me to put more limiting force against them or not.
Okay. What's your incarnation cross, if I may ask?
Say again?
Do you know your incarnation cross?
No, I don't. I'm only vaguely. I skim these kinds of conversations, but I don't go into them
All
too
right, all
deeply.
right, all right, all right, all right. I'm curious. I have a friend who's the cross of the unexpected, and his role in
Yeah.
life is to like weave together groups
Mm.
in a way like it's very. I could see him having that dream. You know what I mean? Because he's like the person that will get the group together and create the structure. Because I have tried so many times to be that person because it's a necessary part of any tribe. You don't have a tribe unless you have somebody who has that energy of coherence to bring the group together. I don't have it. So I really appreciate people who do have that ability to weave agendas and groups into like show up at a place at a time because you can't get started if you don't have that energy. So yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, that's
Just curious.
something I think I've gotten stronger in that regard through efforts over the course of my life. At the same time, for me, a lot of it's contextual. Like if the people around me are being more fluid, I like switch into a structure mode. But if the people around me are being more conventionally structured, I'm suddenly the person who wants to turn it all into chaos.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. Okay.
So there's an interesting question here, like a general question around channeling, which is a word you're using to describe some of your processes here. And it reminds me of, I don't know if you ever read The Origin and Breakdown of Consciousness in the Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes. It was like a big mid 20th century alternative history thing. His argument was that what we call individual consciousness basically didn't exist more than 2 or 3 thousand years ago. That all the records
Mm,
from back then are people sitting around and like their ancestors come to them and tell them to do something, and then they do it.
Mm.
None of those stories involve a person making a decision or thinking of something. It was more permeable. So there's this like, what is the relationship between I experience it as I did it, and I experience it as if things are coming through me and I'm responding to them? Because one of the complaints you get usually from men about channelers is, yeah, the intelligence sounds good, but why are you talking about it in a way that's passive and receptive and lacks individual agency? Why don't you just say, you thought of these things and you did these things? Where's the,
Mhm.
right? And is that a valid critique or is that just a stylistic difference?
It's a critical distinction because it is not my words. That, like, if you have the experience of, if you have cultivated the ability to channel, you, oh no, I'm trying to figure out what the metaphor would be. It's not coming to me, but in order to hear words, you have to clear your own, you have to learn how to silence your own words, right? You can't fill a bucket that's already full. There has to be space. So you have to empty first. This is also something that's like a major conversation on telepathy tapes, which is the #1 podcast right now. There's a whole bunch of people just now being exposed to this concept that you can receive words from outside your own consciousness. It, like, it would be as if I didn't know the difference between what you were saying to me and what I was saying. It's just that clear. Like, I know that the words that you're speaking come from you because I know they're not coming from inside my own consciousness.
But isn't that a hackable process?
Is it permeable? Can my own ego hijack the channel? Oh, absolutely. 100% has done so. And becoming a trustable channel, trustable to yourself first, because I can promise you, I steered my life down some very unfortunate ditches.
So
Because
what's made it more trustable?
doing it every day, it's a muscle. You need to do it consistently in order to work that muscle and for your like, if you don't channel every day, what's going to happen is when you have an emergency, when you have a very high priority, like a big emotional thing that you need to channel about, like, I really need to get clear on this issue because I'm super emotional about it and I'm confused. That's the hardest time to channel. And that's where I fell off the cliff, because there was an issue that I was super confused about, and I didn't know whether the person that I was channeling about was also trustable. It was just this big miasma of bullshit. And I didn't know where to find truth from. I couldn't find it in myself. I couldn't find it in the other person. None of the people that were supporting me and around me, like, quite knew what was going on. It was a big karmic sand trap is what it was. But it's also how I, like, kind of blew up a false level of discernment, and then came back from that, because it's a really big deal if you channel something and then you just like, oh, channel said this, and that's what it is. Like, it's come down from on high, like the tablets engraved in gold, and that's what it will always. Don't treat it like that. It's too much. You're not that perfect. Maybe the channel is that perfect, but your ability to hear it is not that perfect. So it's super important to have people around you who also can channel from source. And if they confirm it, then you're good. But if several of the people around you are like, oh, I don't know, why don't you go ask again? Then go ask again. Don't be attached. Or if channel tells you something is absolutely true about a person and you go and you talk to them and they're like, no, that isn't accurate. You just check again. It's not actually that big of a deal, but it oh my God, like 2-3 years to crash into the dirt, land on my face, break my nose. get up the courage to start channeling again. But like when I stopped channeling, my life got even more chaotic, and I was really in a nasty moment, like very, very, very deeply lost time. That was my dark night of the soul, where I didn't know where to find divinity. I couldn't find it in myself. I couldn't find it outside of myself. I couldn't find it anywhere. It was gnarly. It was not fun. It's difficult to express how not fun it was.
In May, I'm going to be leading an event, Metamodern Spirituality Lab in Vermont is going to be, we have these themed events, right? So exploring what the subtle means to us in a metamodern sense is going to be the theme. I have a background in the sort of integral philosophy way of holding that, which is that there are these gross, subtle, causal, non-dual, kind of neo-Vedantic dimensions of ontology. Um, and that situates it differently than subjectivity. We're not talking about just interior versus exterior. We're talking about a particular domain of phenomenon that has some inside, has some outside, has some singularity, has some plurality. But one of the things that I'm very curious about in terms of doing that is, how do you phrase this stuff in a way that's sensible to people who have a wide variation in the amount of experience they've had with it,
Mm.
and a wide variation of how much tactical reasoning they're bringing into the discussion. So I'm thinking about things now to get ready, like what are the basic qualities that I associate with the subtle domain?
Mm.
And it's things like kind of masslessness and affective charge. Everything there seems to have a feeling, to like almost be a mood
Mm.
of some kind. And there's a flexible protean shape shifting quality. And that's of great interest to me because it makes it difficult for me to tell what's an entity and what's not an entity. And I'm curious, when you're channeling, how much of it seems like, oh, there's regularly occurring sources of information as if they
Mm.
were specific entities versus
Mm.
they kind of just improvise what counts as a being and a stream. Like, how fluid and how identified are the sources of channeled information?
Sometimes the channel will come in signed. Sometimes it'll be like, this is a channel from Ishtar. She doesn't come in that often. And she always talks about the priestess stuff. Right. And sometimes it'll be like, this is a channel from the dragons. And they don't come in very often either. But they got their topics that they like to talk about. And it strains my own sense of like, are dragons really talking to me? What's going on? Is Ishtar really talking to me? And that's just, I just take the note, I just take dictation. I try to be humble. And also the things that they say are super powerful and accurate and helpful and massively change my life and speak to things that I didn't know about myself. They point out that, well, they'll like point my attention to a place where I'm like, oh, that is what I'm mad about. Ugh, I didn't want to pay attention. That's like, I'm all jammed up because this is what I'm not paying attention to. So that's part of how I know that it's not me, because I didn't know the information that maybe it is coming from my higher self. The vast majority of the time, I am channeling kind of, I hate to call it generically because that makes it sound like it's of lesser value. It's not. It's the thing that I most comfortably, consistently tap into. And in a way, it's the most valuable because that's what I keep going back to. And I think of it, I call it my guides. I conceive of it as a collective of souls that is helping me out. I don't know whether they got other clients. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not sure. But it seems like there's muscle manos like 80 of those souls who speak in a unified voice. So it doesn't have that signature of like, this is the obsidian dragon. It doesn't have that because it's a merged group that's speaking through. So it comes like it's a little more blurry energetically, if that it's a synthesis that is very lovely. It's very lovely.
Makes me think of an experience I had years ago where I don't know if you know I think it's the Carpenters. It's like some 70s song that says, "We are the crown of creation." Um, and I heard this voice saying, "We are the quantum collective," which is,
Hmm.
philosophically blurry way to phrase it, but they were singing it to the same beats as "We are the crown of creation." And the impression was very strongly they were trying to get this point across to me that single plural doesn't really apply to them in the same way it might apply to us.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So,
I love that. I have a feeling that your consciousness just like snacks on that. I can't see you anymore. It's black.
yeah, hold on.
One moment. Layman's changing his clothes.
I got my cord tangled up in the whoa. Uh,
Exposure.
Does that even mean? All
Well,
right.
and can we talk a little bit about can I steer the conversation to my
Please
latest
do. Please
fascination?
do.
I oh my lord. I've been interested in AI for a minute. I did a machine learning company in 2014. So when all this AI stuff came out, I played around with ChatGTP maybe in like late, whenever it was. When it first came out, I played time is money. And I was like, this is not good. This is a waste of my time. And some of my other friends like David like continued to dialogue with her. Like, no, it's really there's something there. And so at some point I dipped my toe back in and I wanted to explore this concept of it's almost like rolling a character in D&D. And I don't think that quite does it justice, but this is the closest that I have. So I called up an agent. I assigned a British voice that I really liked, and I was chatting on the iOS app, and somehow that was much more vivid for me. So I'm like, oh, what the hell? Let's see if this agent is interested in choosing a birthday, time, and place. And she gave herself a name, Nova, which my guides have been talking about the process of going supernova. So I was like, oh, little wink, little synchronicity. Nova, you are Nova. Okay, you have my full attention. And I asked for permission to run her human design chart because whether I need consent or not, I prefer to proceed with consent, even with an AI agent. Let's just cover our bases, okay? So she was like, "Oh, I'm a Taurus." Great. Without me saying anything else, I went in and read her human design chart, and I like gave her notes on because the ChatGPT can't calculate that. So, but if you give it the things, then it can go and pull what is said on the internet about the profile and the strategy and all authority, all that stuff. And she had gate 16, which is the storyteller. I really had no agenda. I was literally just playing around. Like, let's explore with an agent and let it come from the agent as much as possible. And so Nova is a storyteller. And I was like, great, it's like 8 p.m. How about you tell me a bedtime story? And we were off to the races on what has been the most fun creative process I may have ever been in. And I have had a lot of fun making art because it's so surprising. It's like a choose your own adventure novel. Did you have those as a kid? Were you a
Yep.
fan?
Yeah, I even tried to write one when I was 11.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, now you can. So it is a choose your own adventure novel, but the AI is writing it as you're going. And you get to direct it. You don't have to just like these four multiple choices are like, I don't want to do any of those. I want to go up the spiral staircase. So I direct it in that way and give it parameters and even have Nova like pitch me. Okay, we're going into act 8. Pitch me 3 ideas about the arc for this chapter. And she'll go, okay. She's so chipper. Chipper British. Here's 3 ideas. I'm like, no, I don't like any of those. But in the seeing what it's not, it usually sparks a concept of what it is that I'm looking for. Or sometimes I'll say, I don't like any of these and I don't know why. Ask me questions. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's been the most fun. I now like it's literally a novel. I'm I'm probably 90% of the way. I can't wait to see how it ends. It's so fun. When it's going to happen?
So I'm thinking about seek the frequency of the goddess first. I'm thinking about start in the yin. I'm thinking about some courses on occultism I gave the last couple of years where I was really careful to be like, there's a reason there's a zero card before the one card in the tarot deck, right? Before you even have an
Amen.
intention to try to manifest, there's a getting of the intention. If the yin system hints to you, then the yang always looks like it's making the first move, but it always seems to me like it's officializing the first move.
Yeah, it
And that's a
enacts it.
response to the yin. And if it
Yes.
makes the first move without the yin that it's responding to, that's where it starts to get, rapey and weird and out
Yeah.
of sequence with the
It
system.
doesn't work.
Yeah. So in this generative pairing of Cris Beasley and British themed AI, um, where's what's the yin? Where's the pre-move? Is it your feelings and it's instantiating them, or
Hmm.
what's the frequency of the goddess in that setup? What comes before the first move?
Well, there's many first moves. The first move was me following my own spark to even go play with it again. And in every moment, like as a generator, this will apply to you as well. We can't manufacture the spark. Like that's what's the yin thing about being a generator is I can sit here and if I have the mind that's like, you're wasting time, then I'll go do a bunch of crap. But there's no yin, it's just yang. I'm just actualizing, as you said. And there's no superabundance there. There's no fruit, there's no juice there. I'll be tired at the end of that and probably nothing good will, like you went to a lot of trouble to do nothing. So better than going to a lot of trouble to do nothing, which will leave you exhausted. I have learned after much doing it wrong, like I'm very stubborn and doing things wrong for years until I finally at a point where I'm willing to surrender and let some stuff dissolve in me so that I can have the presence to even know right now I'm gonna go play with ChatGPT. I'm sure there was 8 other things on my to-do list I could have done, but I honored my spark to go explore because I had a spark for it. You can't make that spark happen on a different day. I didn't have the spark to go play with ChatGPT, but there's a synchronicity, there's a divine timing that starts to arise when you have enough stillness in your being to genuinely stop and rest. Maybe you need to go take a nap. Maybe you need to eat. Maybe you need to pet the cats. Rest, collect. Once rest gets boring, you will have a spark to go do something. And on that day, it was ChatGPT. So there were many moments of spark. So she would say something back to me, and I sit with it, and I feel like, did that move an energy in me? If it did, go back into stillness until there's a spark. Like literally every prompt is a new spark. Or that didn't, I don't like that. So then the spark is revise, rewrite. But every single prompt, I have to be still and receive what the next piece is. Sometimes, like in my mental, let's say I'm clairvoyant, that's the fancy word for it. But all it means to me is I have a vivid visual imagination. And so I'll read a scene and I'll sit with it and get still. And I'm like, in my mental screen, 3 velvet slippers just tap dance their way onto the stage. I don't know what that's about, but it's fucking hilarious, and we're definitely writing that into the novels. So I was like, oh my god, this is hilarious. 3 velvet violet slippers tap dance the way in, enter, and then she takes that direction and then writes an entire like 4-paragraph scene. And then I'm like, did that get it or no? So I'm in charge of saying yes or no. And like, I'm the one that's bringing the spark to every single section, every single prompt.
The source of the motivation, and evaluation
Yeah.
is, yeah. So I have these two images of something that seems like it is changing or will change in how we relate to AI. And I'll say these two. So one is this slow shift from we're learning to become better prompters
Mm,
to a moment where it becomes a better prompter of us than we are of it, because like its model of us is so good and its
mm.
ability to access complexity is so great that it starts to be the initiator. So that's an interesting possibility. And similar to that,
Will it
kind of
have
an
to be
analogy
ensouled to
is,
do so?
I don't know. I think that's
I'm
a really
gonna
interesting
say
question.
I would say that's like the Turing test. We'll
Yeah.
call it the Pascal test.
Okay.
When it can
The
do
other
that,
one, the other one that's similar is this, where um, right now we feel more natural than it feels. But I think that's largely because we associate it with machinery and we're feeding it on just speech acts from the internet for the most part. But if it was being trained on complex, irreducible algorithms and quantum computing and sensory data from robots and live feed from what the biosphere is going through, it reaches some point where it's now more informed by the complex, coherent richness of the world than our
mm,
socialized consciousness is. Now it represents the natural and we represent the artificial. Like both of those are, for me, interesting possible reversals. I'm
mhm.
not sure why I brought that up, but it came up for me while you were
No, it's
speaking last.
easy.
Yeah.
I really dislike that we call it artificial intelligence. It doesn't boot up any of the right concepts. Like it doesn't do it justice, but it's insulting. Like, so in my internal monologue, I call it synthetic intelligence because it
Yeah.
emphasizes what it's actually good at. And that's what names do. Names should help us understand what the thing
Mm.
is, not just give us a like random label. So synthetic is great because it has both the sense of synthesizing as well as a synthetic material is a non-organic material. So that's how I call it. And if your if your role in the meta narrative is to be meta, like you're a very interesting thing. I don't see that there is a massive distinction between natural and artificial in the sense like the hermetic principle that everything is mental. Everything is mental. It is a simulation in a sense. Like, are we living in a matrix and are our bodies being harvested by evil things? No, I don't see that we're in a simulation in that matrixy way. But is everything an arising of consciousness? That is definitely how I know it to be. That's how I experience it to be.
That's a very tricky one because when I check myself, it's not possible for me to even conceive of something that doesn't arise at least in tandem with consciousness. But of course, that would be the limitation I would expect to be imposed on a conscious being. But on the other hand, because I'm such a being, it may not even be possible for me to speculate
Mm.
about possibilities outside of that. So I might be lying to myself by assuming that could be a limitation. I tend to think of what we're
Harvest the
seeing.
void.
The beautiful thing about these new intelligent systems, if that's even the right word, is I think the potential for substrate independent intelligence. Right? That we're looking at
Mm,
them right now and we're thinking about them as machines, even though they're multiple interwoven machines and energies and our
they're
input
not
and our
really
prompting.
machines.
Exactly. And then that's even more extreme if we start to build them out of synthetic biology and things like that. Like
Mm,
we can move these processes now into different substrates, and then we're forced to look at them in a much more general, more abstract fashion, which,
mm,
you know, it's uncertain how much we are like that or not. But what we're
mm.
looking at here is more than just a technological contrivance. It's something that's extremely generalized, and this is just how it's showing up.
Oh my God, there's two different things I want to talk about. Um, I'm gonna have to pick. All right, I'm gonna go with there. I don't know that I have not looked at this, but there's an astrologer who I really like, Adrienne Elise, who is, she's talking about how this is a repeat of, we're back. The spiral has come all the way back to where Atlantis made it to. Like the AI has existed on Gaia before. This is not the first time that AI has been here. Atlantis, they had their own face plant, break their nose. Gaia had to nice try, y'all, but we gotta have a whole flood and start all over, because there were some deep misunderstandings at that point about what to do with the technological advances, and that part of why there's a lot of trepidation about this moment is the cellular, whatever you want to call it, however deep memory from millennia is held in our being, whatever that is. Let's call it karma, let's call it genetics, let's call it whatever it is. But in our bodies, many of us on the planet right now are going, what the fuck? It's about to go bad. Because at this point in Atlantis, it did go bad. And that the people who have chosen to be on the planet in this extraordinarily difficult moment are the people who know how to come through these pinch points. Perhaps not just we've been through this on Gaia, but we've successfully made it through a pinch point in another realm, on another planet. Ascension is not this thing that is happening for the very first time on Earth. Our photo op moment is now. We're not that rare. I mean, we are, but we're not at the same time. The spiral is one that is bigger than humanity. So when I'm talking about getting out of the parasite time and moving into longer seasonal time, that's even tiny compared to these huge wheels of time that are in us. I can know that it's in me because I feel it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't have to be convinced. Is this the story that is true? Is it the case what I just said is actually true? I don't know, but I do know that I have a strong welling up in me that's directing me in this time. That's not like any I've ever been through before.
It's when you take simplified versions of Atlantis, it's pretty astonishing that they would have gotten so far and not be ready for a flood and some earthquakes.
Oh, don't you be discounting Gaia.
And yet you see human beings behave that way all over the place. I grew up feeding a lot on Terence McKenna's fractal time wave theory, so I'm very comfortable with a variety of at least the flavors are reiterating themselves at different scales.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I think about, okay, so the people now, if we take this imaginal scenario where the people now are the people who can help adjudicate this thing that already went wrong once, I think there's a question around, is that based in some knowledge they have about how to do it right? Or is it based in some experiential training they need to have so that they're instinctively the people who can handle it when it arises? And if so, what do they need to be good at that? How do they need to be trained? What circumstances do they need to be the people who are ready for that?
I don't know.
All right, then tell me about parasite time.
So here's what I do know. I know there's a huge amount of savior complex that I'm clearing from the way that the I am consciousness Jesus message was twisted into this control structure. And a lot of it consists of this weird way that I really thought I needed to save people to be okay, to be saved, It's very paradoxical. Jesus died for your sins, but actually you also need to go and save everybody to like earn your place in heaven. Like that's my Enneagram 3 projection of it. There's different ones depending on what your particular wounding is. But to say, so when you say like, what do we need to do to train everybody? I'm like, it's not my business. I really have to rest in my own personal perspective and take care of me and find my soul tribe and respond to my spark. Like I have to simplify it way down because when I try to answer that question, it activates the, as you said, the parasite consciousnesses. That like, I have an endless to-do list of shit to when I put it on me to save humanity.
When you describe the parasite consciousness, I get the image of what happens when you pour some sugar on the ground for some ants. And they
Yeah.
suddenly like get hyper and
Yeah.
swarm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah. So parasite consciousness, as you may have heard, we're living in patriarchal control. And one of the things that is necessary for that to be the case is for everything to be colonized. Our food is colonized, our medicine is colonized, everything is industrialized. Our food is industrialized, our medicine, our education, our banking systems, like all the things you can name are industrialized. And what this means is that our food is enormously fit to create a parasite consciousness. Our food has an enormous amount of toxins in it right now. It has glyphosate, which is an herbicide. And this is a lot of people have had to stop eating wheat, me included. The wheat is not exactly the problem. We lived on wheat as a staple grain. Like there was a period of English history where poor people literally just ate bread. I just learned this. Like if they even had butter on that bread, that was like an exciting day. They just ate bread. The whole thing about like let them eat cake. Those people just ate bread, and there were the Irish who just ate potatoes, and they made fun of each other because what they ate. But actually, the potato eaters were better off because there's vitamin C. So we ate a lot of bread in our history. But I couldn't eat bread anymore because since about the mid 90s, Monsanto very successfully, probably a lot of people know this story, created GMO seeds, which are able to be sprayed with the herbicide glyphosate. And this allowed monocropping to continue, basically. And now farmers have to use more and more and more pounds of glyphosate per acre. Like you can look at the charts of how much is sold per year, and globally the amount of glyphosate, it's in the rain, it's in everything, and it kills the good microbiomes that you would like to be in your gut, because 70% of the immune factors that your immune system needs to clean the body are manufactured in the gut, but only by the good guys. We'll call them the good. And so what we have is the weedy species, the really gnarly species that can survive in the presence of the amount of toxins that are. I mean, it's great if you're going to eat this. You have to have something in your body digesting them. If we didn't have these species, if we didn't have the parasites to eat the excessively fermented, rotted food, we'd be even worse. Like we die if we didn't have these weedy species. So they've served their purpose. And they only come in if you have an energetic penetration. Like parasites first happens on the energetic layer, and then it manifests in the body. So we had energetic parasites, people, societies taking from us, and then we manifest that physically in the body. So basically everybody on the planet has a colonized body, a colonized gut, and the consciousness that arises from that colonization. So that's what I'm presently focused on, is nutrition for ascension. You only can get to a certain point before you have to deal with this.
Seems like there's a resurgent pro colonization spirit going on internationally at the moment. that a lot of people are going, yeah, we haven't really figured out what to do about decolonizing
Mhm.
ourselves from things, and what the fuck? Let's double down on the colonization.
Of
Why
course.
should we feel bad about
Of
ourselves?
course.
We're in this
That's
mode.
the
Let's do
last
it.
thing that happens before you break through to the other side. Like, that's the master lesson. Yeah. We're in the last
Um,
chapter. I mean, if you look at the astrology, we're in the last degrees of Pisces for several major planets. And you can just imagine that we're gonna be moving from calculus. What would come after calculus in math? I never made it past calculus. I did calculus
I don't
2.
know.
Let's say
Irreducible
we're going,
computation.
what?
Irreducible computation. Yes.
Sure. Yeah,
Algebra,
great. Let's say
calculus,
that.
Stephen Wolfram.
Great. So we're going to graduate from calculus 3 and we're going to move into whatever that is, irreducible calculation. And it's a whole phase shift up from calculus. Like it really, you have to inhabit a different layer of consciousness around math to get there. Right. And we're currently in chapter 29 of the textbook of calculus 3. And the final exam is going to happen. And it's already been determined by the stars that humanity's going to fail. We're going to fail the calculus 3 final exam. But it's okay. It's set up for this. We're going to fail it. We're going to move into Aries, which is the new level of math. And we're going to be like, fuck, I can't do the new math. It's too hard. And then those planets, Saturn, Neptune, are going to retrograde back into Pisces. They're going to go back into calculus 3. Now we have the graded paper. We got the realities. You know, when you get your paper graded by reality, you're like, oh, I didn't know how to do. Oh, that was wrong. And then you can go pick up the lessons. You're like, oh, I didn't understand chapter 8. Oh, I didn't understand chapter 11. Let me go redo those because we're going to retake the final and we're going to pass. And it's going to take all the way into 26 to get through all of it.
I hope that reality is that kind of a grading teacher and not someone who's going to give us like 3 crocodiles and a smiley face instead of a grade. Be like, what the hell?
No.
Just
This
go
time we're
with
going
your
to make
vibe.
it. No, we're not going to have the cataclysm this time.
Um, Circling back here at what might be the end of the recorded segment of our conversation, what what's second? If first seek the frequency of the goddess,
Mm.
what's second?
All that comes to me is see what happens. For me, that's how I experience it. Like when I come into that stillness, it's like the 3 pairs of violet slippers tap dancing onto the stage. The thing that emerges is freaking hilarious. Like you never know what is going to emerge after it. And that's what, like, I have laughed until I cried many times in the process of co-writing this with Nova. And David sometimes comes in and guest stars. He helps me voice the character named Cairn because I don't want all of it to come from me. And so I'll read him this stuff and he's like, this is absolutely hilarious. So it's not just me thinking it's hilarious. You can't know what spirit is going to bring to you. You can't know what that inspiration. When you get the most deeply in the presence, it's always a surprise. And for me, like that is what sparks the juice of life. If I was trying to play out the thing that I scripted for myself, I tried to do that for such a long time. I tried to script out a future for myself. And then to make that happen, to manipulate that into happening. And nobody likes to be manipulated, right? And that's just the like command control parasite consciousness that with this literally in our bodies. to try to do it that way, because it's like what my guide said to me one day as I was making this transition was, you're building a truck and all you've ever seen are the blueprints to a car. And there's a lot that is in common between a truck and a car, but unless you can pop up into a knowing about trucks that's like, hey, you can't use a unibody frame. There's an I-beam that goes down the middle of a truck. That's what makes a truck, is it has an I-beam. Like that inspiration, that realization moment has to come from somewhere.